Well, today is the last sermon in the series, Psalms, the book that reads you. Now, the great thing about Psalms is it literally does read you. I love Psalms because it like gives me words to sort out my feelings, my emotions, my struggles. And I often will, as I'm reading through the Psalms, I just will pick out sections and read it out loud and say, God, that's my prayer right now. That's how I'm feeling. That's what I need. And today we're going to be looking at Psalm 34. It's an amazing psalm, but let me just tell you a little bit about this psalm. First of all, did you know in life, every single one of us is going to have to deal with loss and heartache? It's part of the human experience in a fallen world. I mean, there are people who are going to come against us. There are going to be people who will come against you. There will be people who will betray you. Have you ever had someone in your life that just all of a sudden, for no understandable reason, they just don't want to be your friend anymore? They begin to criticize you and come against you. And I mean, that's tough. Instead of believing the best about you, they kind of rewrite the script and imagine things that you were thinking, feelings. And how do you deal with that? I mean, the loss of those relationships are great and life-changing, and it's hard to get through those tough times. How are we going to get through those kind of tough times? Psalm 34 tells us how we can do that. Now, this is not a psalm about mutual forgiveness and reconciliation. I mean, because you know what? That doesn't always happen. This is actually a story about separation from an oppressor, and it's David. And in Psalm 34, it's happening that he has run away from Saul, the king he faithfully served, and he would live for the rest of his life as a fugitive, separate from Saul. Why? Because anytime David got close, Saul went crazy and he was throwing spears at him and trying to kill him. And I mean, it was a very tough situation that actually never got resolved. There would be no great reunion moment in this particular story. Saul dies, estranged and an enemy of David. David, however, in that moment, writes a great lament for his king, whom he loved, who had become his enemy. It's an amazing story. You know, Romans tells us that we should live at peace with people as much as we can. Romans 12:18. If it is possible, that's a really important statement right there. Can you all say that with me? If it is possible. Go. If it is possible. You know, for David, it wasn't possible. He tried. Romans says, if it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Don't be the pot stirrer in your relationships. Don't be hurting people and lying about people. And as much as it depends on you, live peaceably with all men. I know that sometimes this kind of tension is really hard to deal with because we're not in charge of everybody's responses. And we can't make them live at peace with us. I mean, we can declare an act of peace, which kind of means I'm a beggar. When you decide to be my friend again, when you decide to be at peace with me, I'm ready. It's a done deal. I got you. But if they don't ever decide, you can't do anything. Sometimes when we find ourselves in those situations, it's so painful and so difficult, we begin to blame God. We act like that God is the one who has allowed this to happen, and we sort of make him guilty of letting it happen. And the truth is that God gets blamed for a lot of things he never did. And when we blame God, we step away from God, who is the only one who can help us in that situation. The hurt of other people comes to us, and it is the devil's intention to let that make us step away from God and stop trusting God and stop depending on God. But the truth is that would be a wrong decision. We need to learn how to live in the tension of having someone, from a biblical definition, is an enemy. Now, a lot of people struggle because they feel like, well, you know, if everybody's not happy with me, then it must be me. And some of you feel that way, and I'm going to tell you, you're wrong. Stop it. You don't have the power to make peace with everybody because there are two people required to make a peace, and you're only one of them. And sometimes when, you know, even in our Christian world, we think, well, if everybody's not happy with me, then I must have a spiritual problem. I must be wrong. Well, you might be, and you often are. I know I've made mistakes this week. I had to go back and clean up, ask forgiveness, and tell people I was sorry. I mean, I've had to do that. But not every time are you the one that can change it. You do your part. And when we begin to think, well, I'm just not very good, and we blame ourselves, we can also take a step away from God and live in this pseudo self-blame that doesn't do you or anybody any good. So if there are people who aren't nice to you, people who are fighting you, you've tried your best to make peace with them, but they're not responding, they're still mad, they kind of like being mad at you. There are people like that, right? I have people like that. Don't conclude that you're a terrible person, that God doesn't love you, your relationship with God is at risk. No, wait a second here. Listen to what David has to say in Psalm 34 to help you walk through and process those seasons of life where the enemy has come against you and you can't do anything about it. I love this psalm because it immediately tells us the context. It begins like this: a psalm of David when he pretended madness before Abimelech, who drove him away and he departed. What in the world is going on here? You can go back to 1 Samuel chapter 20 and 21 and discover what is going on. David, the young forgotten shepherd boy in the kingdom of Saul, all of a sudden, one day, is discovered and he begins to play music for Saul, who is dealing with bouts of depression. And then one day, he walks onto the battlefield and hears the voice of a Philistine giant. His name is Goliath, who challenges the whole army to a duo, and nobody was courageous enough to fight him. So David steps up and says, I'll do it. In the name of my God, I will fight this Philistine, believing that God will be on my side and I'm going to win. And he goes with a slingshot and a few stones and he kills Goliath. Can you imagine? David is immediately catapulted to national fame. And his success on the battlefield on that day as a young boy leads Saul the king to put him out in the field to fight many more battles. And everywhere David went, he succeeded. He was the mighty young warrior general that served Saul the king. And all was well until all of a sudden, there was a song that got developed. If there had been TikTok in that day, this song would have gone viral and would have become TikTok famous. Now, lest you believe that I'm confused, I know they didn't have social media back then, but let's just go ahead with this. This is the TikTok famous song sung by the women as they dance in the street. Saul has killed his thousands and David has killed his 10,000s. Boy, that's a fun song. I mean, at first, I'm sure David felt a little bit gratified, like, wow, they actually noticed that I'm doing a good job. And all was well for a little while, but it didn't take very long for Saul to become angry and mad at David because he did not like the comparison. Oh, great. So the old guy's out and the new guy's in. Saul killed 1,000. David has killed 10,000. And he began to hate David for no other reason than jealousy, to the point that it wasn't long until he's throwing spears at David, trying to kill him, and David runs, and then he comes back and tries again. And then finally, the time comes when Saul is angry at his own son Jonathan for being a friend of David, and he throws a spear at Jonathan. At this point, David flees. See, because Saul is the king of the entire domain, and all of the army and all of the informants and intelligence reports go to Saul. He couldn't hide out anywhere. So what does David do? David flees to the place that he least expects Saul would pursue him. You know where that is? The hometown of Goliath, the mighty warrior of the Philistines. David's hoping to lay low. However, because this song is now TikTok famous, the people in Gath are singing the song too. And pretty soon someone recognizes David and says, "You're that guy, aren't you? Come on, I'm taking you to the king." They bring him before the king and they say, "King, this is the guy who killed our champion. This is the guy who's the mighty warrior who's defeating our people. This is the guy of whom they are singing. Saul has killed his thousands and David has killed his 10,000s. And in Psalm 34, if you go back to Samuel, David is afraid. He is so afraid. Now, David has been in a lot of bad situations before, but he is thinking, whoa, this is the moment. I have no escape. I could be killed at this very moment. So what does David do? He cries out to God. I don't know if this was an idea that God gave him, but it worked. As they're accusing David of being this great mighty warrior who they're singing about, David pretends to be mad. He starts drooling on his beard. He's acting like a crazy man. He's scratching on the doors. And the king looks over at David as he pretends to be insane and says, "Oh, really, guys? Do I not have enough insane people in my house already that you're bringing me one more insane man? Get this guy out of here." And then David flees now to the wilderness. And the song he sings is a different song than what they were singing about David killing the 10,000s. And he writes Psalm 34. And you know what Psalm 34 is? It's a primer on what to do when you have an enemy that is against you and you're all alone and you've run out of options and you don't see any path forward. So let's look at this psalm. I have 3 points to pull up because it's a long song. Number one, first thing David does in this psalm is he worships God. Psalm 34, verse 1. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul shall make its boast in the Lord. The humble shall hear of it and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. David doesn't sing about Saul. I mean, have you ever written a song about an enemy before? Oh, Saul, that dirty, rotten scumbag king. I mean, have you ever written songs like that? Have you ever had like revenge strategies that erupt out of your soul? Oh, I just can't wait to get them in a corner and I would tell them. Okay, have you ever had? This is not what he's going to. He actually walks away from his struggle and he just worships God. You know, it's possible because whoever you focus on is who you worship. It's always that way. Whatever you focus on is what you worship. Sometimes we have been hurt by people and we can legitimately focus on them and that hurt, and you've got to address it. You got to process it and work through it. But you know, you can develop a special kind of focus towards someone that you need to like move on from. Forgive, even if they're not asking for it, and just move on. If you focus on the person that hurt you too much, what you've actually done is created them as an idol. because they occupy space in your heart, mind, and soul that really belongs to God. I read the story about somebody who was a 92-year-old woman, and they brought a young lady to visit her, and within minutes, this 92-year-old woman said, "You know what, when I was young, my sister, she didn't give me the dollar to be able to, I think, to go to school. So I didn't go to school." And then she began to rehearse this whole event, this whole experience. And they walked out, and the person that had brought their friend said, "She's 92, and honestly, she talks about it all the time in great detail. She rehearses every detail of the dollar her sister didn't give her back in the day." You know what she's done? She's made an idol of that experience. I hate to tell you this. People are going to hurt you. People are going to accuse you of stuff you're not guilty of. People who your friends can become your enemy. And you can begin to focus on that to the point where they become such a central idea in your mind. And you know what David does to combat that? He stops everything and he begins by saying in his trouble, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall be continually be in my mouth." We just sang today, okay? He even says, "Oh, magnify the Lord with me." He says, "Come on, join me. Let's all worship the Lord together." Did you know that coming to church every week and worshiping the Lord is such an incredibly important thing that we do, because it's an opportunity for us together to set aside all of the stuff in our life and focus on worshiping the God who should be the number one focus of our life. Now, I love to watch people sing in church. And I've noticed some of you don't sing. I'm joking, not really. I can't see all of you. You can go to church and not worship, and you just stand there and wait for the music to be done, and you're forfeiting an incredible moment where you need to be in the presence of God, where you need to consciously allow all the other things of your life to fall away and worship the God. I just love that last song that we sang. Jake did such a great job leading us. God, I don't deserve anything. I just want you. I just want to be in your presence. So all those mean, ugly people out there who hate me, well, Lord, I'm going to forget them for right now, and I'm going to just worship you. Now you can come and you can sing. Offer a beautiful sound in worship to God. Or you can just sing and not worship. It's all in your heart. Some of you don't ever offer a beautiful sound to the Lord because you just can't sing, but you're worshiping. In your trouble, in your despair, in your hurt and hardship, you've got to remember that God is still there. And you've got to shift your focus to God. And one of the ways we do that is by worshiping God. Number 2, you need to seek God. Seek God for a solution. Verse 4, "I sought the Lord and he heard me and delivered me from all my fears." I mean, you know what he's talking about here? Yeah, God taught me how to be a crazy man for a few minutes. And they bought it. I was drooling and scratching, and man, I was acting crazy. Now, some of you all have people in your life, and they're not acting. But what David is celebrating is, I can't believe that the God who created heaven and earth, the God who is this transcendent being, who knows the beginning from the end, who has all power and sits in all majesty and glory, still will listen to me. He will still help me. He was just loving that moment. I mean, if you're in trouble today, you know what you should do? You should cry out to God and ask God to help you. Why are the people who look to God, they're described as their faces are radiant? Because they're reflecting the glory of God, because there is a God in heaven who is willing to come and help you. He is close to the brokenhearted. He is there for you. Do you believe that today? Cry out to the Lord now. Now, if you get angry at the Lord because some people aren't nice, and aren't nice is an understatement for what you're experiencing, and you walk away from God, you're on the wrong path. Stop blaming God for what other people are doing. Why don't you just worship the Lord? Cry out to him. Ask for his help. And then I love how David explodes with this statement. It's probably my favorite verse in this whole chapter. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who trusts in him. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who trusts in him. Oh, fear the Lord, you his saints. There is no want for those who fear him. The young lions lack and suffer hunger. Even strong people, they have times of difficulty. But those who seek the Lord shall not lack any good thing. God draws us to himself with his love. I read a quote this week, I think it's by John Bevere. He says that God draws us to himself with his love, but keeps us close with his fear. The idea of the fear of the Lord is just simply this. You know what I believe with all my heart? That God's got it. He understands everything. If you want to live the best life you could ever live, you should follow what God has said is the right way to live. Now, I know there's all kinds of alternative ways to build your life, but if you really want to be like Jesus said, that person that builds his house on the rock, and when the rain and the storms come, your house is going to stand, then you need to listen to what he has to say. You need to trust that he is right and his righteousness is good, and it will bless you. And even though not everybody else is doing that, you will follow the plan of God as he declares it in Scripture, and you will choose to do what's right no matter what it costs you, because in the end you believe that it will be the best. I've told you this before, but I had a wonderful mother who there was one verse she often quoted to me in my teenage years. It's Galatians 6:7-9. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that will he also reap. It's just the law of the world. What you sow is what you're going to reap. And then she would go on. For he who sows to the flesh will of the flesh reap corruption. You want some corruption in your life? Well, it depends on what you're sowing. But he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. And let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. This is the verse my mom would quote as I, in high school, would get ready to go out for the night with my friends, and she would say, Eddie, listen, just remember, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man sows, he will also reap. It's have a good time. This is my mom. Exceedingly effective, by the way. So I grew up with this strong sense of the fact that why would I forfeit the best life God could give me? Why would I do that? Seek the Lord. Cry out to him. Are you in trouble today? Are you in trouble? Are you struggling? Don't waste a trip to church. How about here, in that pew, this Sunday, in this service, before you leave, why don't you bow your head and cry out to God and say, God, I'm in trouble, don't know what to do, would you please help me? And watch the eternal God of the universe step in and help you. Third, pursue peace and reject evil. Come, you children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. Who is the man who desires life and loves many days, that he may see good. Isn't that all of us? Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. What is not in this psalm is as important as what is in this psalm. David does not write a psalm where he complains about the evils of the king. He doesn't do that. He doesn't write a psalm where he meditates on how mistreated he is, how unjust God is. He doesn't write a song about, these are the songs you and I write, right? Let me just tell you how bad they are. Oh, they're your friend. Well, I hope you'll be okay. Have you ever heard anything like that? Well, I just want to warn you. What are you warning me about? Well, I'd like to tell you. All right, this is not the path. Stop your tongue from evil and speaking deceit. The Bible says in Proverbs 18, the tongue can bring death or life. It's that powerful. I don't know about you, but does it ever feel like that in American society nowadays, we have forgotten that the tongue is powerful? And it seems like we slice and dice each other all the time. And now we have this beautiful thing called Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, where we take an evil tongue and we slice and dice by the millions. And we're all bleeding and discouraged and we feel terrible. I wonder what's going on. Well, I think Proverbs just told us. How about you solve a lot of your problems by being quiet? Be careful what you say. Depart from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. Seek peace and pursue it. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their cry. The face of the Lord is against those who do evil, to cut off the remembrance of them from the earth. The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears and delivers them out of their troubles. The Lord is near to those who have a broken heart and saves such as have a contrite spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. He guards all his bones. Not even one of them is broken. Evil shall slay the wicked, and those who hate the righteous shall be condemned. The Lord condemns the soul of his servants, and none of those who trust in him. The Lord redeems the souls of his servant, and none of those who trust in him shall be condemned. You know, what I see here is David, he lets God be God and do the judging. And he just decides to pursue peace as much as he can. You don't have to condemn the evil people around you. God's the judge. God's at work. Just humble yourself before God. Pursue peace. You will have enemies, people who don't like you. No matter what you do, they aren't going to like you. What is the formula for dealing with enemies that is the most life-changing and healing, unifying to a family and to a community? What would that be? Well, Jesus teaches us how to treat enemies. You got an enemy? Thinking of anybody today? Maybe the person beside you, give them a little nudge. I'm kidding, don't do that. Jesus says in Matthew 5:43, you have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Oh, don't know how. Love them. What if they don't love me back? They won't. Love them anyway. Bless those who curse you. Are you kidding me? I'm going to let them get away with all that stuff that they're saying, the lying and evil speak that's going on? Yeah. Don't you try to match evil for evil. What if they secretly hear that you bless them behind their back? Do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. This is the beautiful part. That you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. So what do you suppose, how you treat an enemy? You love them, you bless them, you do good to them, you pray for them. And maybe you don't have the proper emotion as you begin to do that, but if you'll do that over time, it will pick out the shrapnel of their offense bit by bit until finally they have no more power over you. So who are you fighting? Just declare peace. Give them to the Lord. I know this tension is hard to deal with. I can't promise you can live without it. But I can show you Psalm 34 that teaches us how to live in it. Last thing is this. Are you at peace with God? Are you at peace with God? Do you think God likes you? Do you see God as this deity that looks over your shoulder with this, like a ruler in hand, like my piano teacher used to be, and smack you every time you do something? Is that how you see God? I actually did have a piano teacher like that. She'd smack my fingers every time I stumbled on the keyboard. I don't know that it didn't make me a better pianist, I'm just saying. Or do you realize that God made you and he formed you in your mother's womb, and he knows everything about you, and he watches you like a good father watches a child, and he wants more than anything for you to be at peace with him. And in that relationship, all of us are Saul. We fight God for no reason at all because he's only good. And he stands with arms open wide and he says, when you're ready to make peace, I'll receive you. And how do we make peace? You know how Jesus made peace? He sent his son, Jesus. Colossians 1:19 and 20 says this, for it pleased the Father that in him all the fullness should dwell. This is talking about Jesus. And by him, once again, that's Jesus, to reconcile all things to himself. By him, whether things on earth or things in heaven, having made peace through the blood of his cross. Jesus went to a bloody cross and he died to pay for our sin. And he declares on that cross the love of God. And all you have to do is ask for his forgiveness, and the peace is ready. Have you done that? How about doing that today, if you haven't? Would you bow your heads, please? Maybe you're here today and you are troubled by the enemies of your life. Rightly so. That's what they do. They trouble us. How do you get past this? How will you survive this tension? Well, how about worshiping the Lord, putting it in his hands? You may have to run away because you don't need to be there when they start throwing spears. But you just give it to the Lord and let him be the number one thing you focus on, and cry out. And just say, God, help me. Don't know what to do. Need your help. Will you please come and help me? And if you're here today and you're not at peace with God, why don't you pray with me right now? Say, God in heaven, I want to be at peace with you. I ask you to forgive me of my sin and my many offenses toward you. I believe you made peace possible through the blood of the cross of Jesus. And Jesus, I believe you loved so much that you died for us. You paid for our sin. And then you rose again victorious. And so today, I'm ready to receive you as my Lord and Savior. I mean, God, I put myself under your authority. I want to follow you and obey you. I need you. I want this peace in my life. I receive you, Jesus, as my Lord and Savior today. August 15, 2021. Amen. You know, and if you did pray, the connection card is there. Would you write that you accepted Christ today? And I'm going to ask our counselors to come to the front, and we would love to pray with you. Oh my goodness, how exciting it would be for us to be able to just stand with you this morning and thank God for what he has done in your life. So I want to invite you to come. Would you stand, please? We're going to worship, and we invite you to come. If you have anything else to pray for, we want to come and help you. You don't have to be alone.